Hey guys, welcome. Yeah, so a few things, and so first, so recently one of you asked for a book recommendation. Hey guys, welcome. Yeah, so first as always, thank you, Lord Christ. I love you. And so recently one of you asked me for book recommendations. I haven't responded to the comments, sorry. Like, I've had like a really hectic, really busy, and from different angles, last few days. And anyway, so here it is. And so, you know, like, I never thought I'd find myself like doing one of these videos about book recommendations. This channel is now and forever committed to just like the math, but this is still very much on topic. It's math book recommendations. I'm not very well read. Like, I could literally like right now grab about like 40 books and just lay them down right here. I'm looking at a bookshelf, and this is not the only bookshelf I have. So basically I have hard copies of very many books, but most of them I have not read. Like Moby Dick, yes. So Moby Dick, for example, like, well, so there was a friend or an acquaintance a long time ago who like taught at a private school, and in a conversation, as I often tend to, like, I was talking very deep and philosophical conversation, although that was like our second time or first time together. And anyway, we liked each other, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of it, I said, oh, okay, so you're an English teacher. What book do you recommend that I read? Like, of all the books you read with your students, which one is like best? And he said, Moby Dick. So either he gave it to me or I bought it then. Anyway, I have that on my bookshelf, but I have not read it. Not even a couple of pages. I have a book called Zero, like, so it's supposed to be about the number zero. I think I read 2 pages of it and I got bored. So most of the time, as would happen with movies, it's not that like I'm like putting myself as like being that smart, but I have like a crazy imagination. So like if I like watch like 5 minutes of the movie or read like a couple of pages, I can imagine how it would unfold, or like imagine all the different scenarios of what could happen. Most of the time they're pretty limited, so it's too predictable and I'll just give up. But there are books that I have read like page to page, either because, you know, I was once a student and I had to, or like in college, my college like required that you not only do the sciences if you're a science major, like a math major, but it really emphasized like social sciences and the humanities, not just the natural sciences. And so like there were requirements, course requirements, for example, where like among 4 or 5 courses you had to choose like a course that taught you social sciences, so like politics and philosophy and such. And the specific course I selected, which was year-long, broken into 3 semesters, was called Power, Identity, and Resistance. Power, Identity, and Resistance. And dude, man, it's shaped like largely who I am. So as much as the math courses I took in college, like, and as much as the science education that I got that, you know, I subsequently used in my career, the social sciences, like, you know, learning about philosophy and politics, all of that, like, has helped me, not helped me as much as like the math, for example, because I do that for a living and every aspect of my life. But the social sciences is like defined who I am. So like I'm so happy that like I went through having to read these books. And so some of the books are like Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith, The Fear of Moral Sentiments, which I think is also by Adam Smith, Karl Marx, Engels reader, right? Like, and Hume, but some of my favorites, Locke, Rousseau, and of course Nietzsche, Kant, like so many others. And the last semester was devoted to like kind of civil rights. So we read Sullivan, who like on a paper said that there's no scientific evidence for being homosexual and yada yada. And so read it, like, and it's still true. Like, find me a scientific evidence that suggests that being gay is natural. They're transgendered people, naturally transgendered people, and so, you know, that I like can accept. Like, in fact, the head singer of an amazing band called Lower Dens on Twitter, like, actually responded to my tweet, which I thought was like really humble and awesome of them. And that person is, I think, a transgendered person, and it's, I think, a she, because yeah, like physically it's a she, but you can see that that person is a transgendered person. So I love naturally transgendered people, and Jesus created them just like you and I, but homosexuality is not. But I digress. Anyway, I like, see, like, some of who I am now is shaped by some of these readings. So I'm saying all this to say, as much as I am very not well read, very not well read. I have read very few books, page to page, in my entire life. It's actually shameful, and most of them are math books. So while I emphasize math education and reading math books, I'm also saying that, like, all these other things are like, reading all these other things is very important, because, like, yes, you know, you can talk to friends and learn, but your friends can only teach you so much. And some of these people I just named are like some of the greatest thinkers in human history, and so of course you want to get a little bit of what they thought into your thought process and into your life. So in the last semester, which was really cool, that was the resistance piece. So it was a little bit about civil rights in that power, identity, and resistance course. We read MLK, Malcolm X, Gandhi, and things like that. And so that was also really, really cool, because, well, these are like modern day philosophers, so to speak, and modern day, like, shape cultivators, if you want to call them that. Okay, whatever the word is. But we're in this video to do a math book recommendation. As I said, like, I am, first of all, not very well read. I've read a total of maybe, like, I don't know, 10 to 12 books page to page, and of them, the vast majority of them are math books. And so I'm saying that these are worth my time, and therefore definitely worth your time. And in no particular order, these are the books that I recommend. Shape of Space, I guess, like, just because that's on the forefront of my mind, you've got to somewhat admit that it's got to be like my favorite. And so my number one, if you have to like rank them, Shape of Space, and then Simply Calculus by Michael Spivak. I've mentioned this book before, Spivak, and this is by Jeffrey R. Weeks. I don't know if it's two or but I've given you enough of his name that Google will fix the spelling for you. Okay, what other books? Well, okay, Our Mathematical Universe. And this is by an MIT professor, Max Tegmark. Okay. Any others? Well, I can add on to these like a couple of other books, but like if I had to pick like three, right? Like, and you know, who's got that much time? Anybody got time for that? So I want to limit like my recommendations so that you like take them even more seriously than you would otherwise. And again, if I had to rank them, I'd say 1, 2, 3. The justification is not going to feel consistent. These two, actually, I'm going to tie for 2. That way, the justification is consistent. I'll tell you what I mean. So, like, the reason why I'd recommend this book is to add to your mathematical understanding and mathematical growth. So, let me say a little bit more. So, the book is simply called Calculus, and it's by Michael Spivak. It's literally the most beautifully written calculus book, and it's incredibly rigorous. So we used it in my first year in honors calculus. But if you read the preface of the book, Spivak himself says that the book was really intended to be an analysis book. Analysis is like a course you take after Calc 3 if you're a math major, and it's the first time that you do lots and lots of proofs. So analysis is the first deeply proof-based math course. And so, as you can imagine, this calculus book is full of proofs. Some of the proofs that I share, including the supremum and infimum definition of the integral that I introduced a little bit ago. So all of those things are like in that book. So you'll get lots and lots out of the book. But it also does a fantastic amount of like carefully chosen, really well crafted practice. So you've seen me share lots of integrals. Some of the more interesting integrals have come from this book. So it's really, really well written, and it's basically like my highest recommendation for any calculus book. And as I said, it's actually an analysis book, but it's like a calculus book. So it's like the best thing that a well-trained high school mathematician can do, math kid. Well, I reserve the name mathematician for people who've gotten a math PhD and actively pursue like math research. So I don't want to call anyone who's not that, including myself, a mathematician. But basically, this is like, if you want to grow as a mathematician, it's literally the best book after you get all the fundamentals, like up to Calc 3, and maybe even you add linear algebra and diffie-q, because those two don't require lots of proofs. So, but thereafter you go to analysis, and this is the best book as a transition to a mathematical analysis. And of course, math analysis is then a foundation for other courses like abstract algebra and complex analysis and topology. Speaking of which, I have found that like the more advanced the math course, the more beautiful it is and the more interesting and engaging it is, because basically, like, as you go into more advanced math, you can do weirder and weirder things. So the weirder things to explain in our reality, they are accessible the more advanced math you learn. For example, by reading a chapter of the Jeffrey R. book's Shape of Space somewhere, you'll be able to kind of understand how our reality is actually maybe infinite dimensional, but definitely at minimum 4-dimensional. And there, he talks about like taking like stuff out of a fridge without ever opening it. That's possible in the 4th dimension. And so basically what Jeffrey R. Weeks's book is like, well, so other than my amazing own channel, the one channel I really like is 3Blue1Brown. And the reason why I like that channel so much is because, well, there are a bunch of channels, including mine, that show you the algebra of things. And of course, I frequently take the time to explain the why behind the algebra and the big picture, but like I don't always visually represent things. And what 3Blue1Brown does so well is that he visually represents the ideas really, really well in virtually every video, or in the majority of his videos. And so that's what's cool, because he's offering a different perspective, right? Okay, and so the Shape of Space is that, but for topology. Because like, well, I've sat in a topology class, and you do these very easy to remember, to memorize, like mechanical proofs, and you go through algebraic topology or whatever other version of topology you take. Basically, you could do it just like every other math course you have done, which is learning proofs and learning the mechanics of proofs, but also understanding the concept. But just like reading a book as opposed to watching a movie, you're kind of creating the visual in your head when you're going through these courses individually, as an individual student. There isn't, like, those courses aren't taught, including topology, in a standard classroom. They're not taught in a way where you like really get the picture. So that's where this is. It's not like a rigorous topology book in the same way that your like topology class course book might be. However, this is written so that it's even accessible to like advanced students in high school, and it's like a really, really awesome foundational perspective on topology that fills you in on all the visuals that are missing in every other topology book. Why else do I love it? Well, because like basically it in a way reveals the multiverse. So I don't know if you've heard this idea, but there's this idea that like there are actually infinitely many universes, not just one, and they're either vast distances apart or they're all at one, taking place at the same time. And so for me, like I can't say which is which. Like the latter seems more plausible than the former. Why would they be vast distances apart? And also like infinitely many things are possible, like at each node in time. And so like I could easily imagine why it all take place at the same place and at the same time. So it's just like there are infinitely many universes, but you're just taking like a slice, a cross section at one time, and then another cross section, and a specific set of those cross sections make your narrative in your life, as opposed to a specific other set of cross sections you could have made. I don't know if that made sense. If it didn't make sense, so be it. Read this book and it will make more sense. Finally, this one. All right, and so this obviously is not like the Spivak calculus book, and that like it's actually like reading a novel, which is it's lots and lots of words. There's very little math in this. Although I might go back and add two interesting facts, which is like my school is one of the best schools in the world where I went to college, and it's like a top 5 school in the world right now. And anyway, according to US News, anyway, they invited Michael Spivak to come to the school to give a speech, and I guess he's like somewhat arrogant, like anyone who's very good at anything, and he turned them down. Like it's like, okay, it's like, I mean, yeah, it's basically the same as like turning down Harvard or some other like high caliber school, but he did. But I come back to him because like his book, although deeply mathematical, is written like a novel, which is he talks to you, like in places he jokes with you. I guess like I love the book so much that I read it that closely to see the places where he's talking to you, but there are places where he's actually literally engaging with the reader. And so that I thought was like a very interesting like little take on every other math book you've ever read where the author is not engaging with the reader except for mathematically and just like basically allowing you to fill in the blanks. This guy's like literally talking to you as he's teaching you the math, which is amazing. So that, but our mathematical universe, right? Like, so as I said, it's lots and lots of words, and as you can imagine, it's about the universe, and it starts with the formation of the universe, which is like the Big Bang, and how close can we get to it, and what advancements have been made to like getting closer to the initial Big Bang time. Okay, sounds like I'm speaking a foreign language, but anyway, so yeah, it starts to talk about that, but also as it goes along, like it talks about Max Tegmark's, sorry, I called him Mark Tegmark, Max Tegmark, an MIT professor. It talks about his life and how, you know, how his life evolved with the work that he was doing and researching the shape of the universe. See, it's related to that, but in a very different way. This is like, yeah, anyway, this is my number one recommendation for a reason. This is like, and literally like using telescopes and so on and what was done. And so the first 4 chapters are all about that, the progression of work and the labor that went into it. And as I said, some background about Tegmark. And then like chapter 5 or 6 starts with the multiverse. So ultimately it's building up to talk about the multiverse theorem, which is why this book and this book are deeply related, although very different perspectives and different takes. And so I like talked about the multiverse at length, at enough length in this video for me to feel that no more additional discussion of it is warranted. And I also, like, if you haven't noticed, don't like talking about anything that I don't deeply understand. I only share something that I deeply understand, and so I should stop here to like basically maybe in the future I run out my continued thoughts on this and share with you, but at the moment yeah, I've like said enough. But I actually, at the most interesting juncture in this book, I stopped reading it. But yeah, one of the books that had a lot of words that I read from beginning to end was the autobiography of Albert Einstein, because like I love him and like I find him deeply engaging, so I wanted to know everything about him, just like the autobiography of Allen Iverson. I read that too very, very closely. Anyway, yeah, so this, just like those two, I read very closely up to the chapter that starts talking about the multiverse. But then I stopped because I have my own perspective on what the multiverse is, as I've already shared, and I didn't want Max Tegmark's perspective to kind of like adulterate my perspective. If I read his, then like, I mean, he's a very interesting thinker and thinks, or like from videos I've watched and things I've read of him, he like very much has the same perspective on the multiverse that I have held in my head. And so I thought if I continued reading, he would like set the basically resolve my perspective to a degree, although I'm like stubborn enough to keep a different perspective than him somehow. And so I kind of like didn't want to know like that what was in my head may be right, and that may be why I didn't read it. But adulterate is the correct word, because basically I just didn't want it to mess with my own perspective and images of the multiverse. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this, and the next video will get back to the good old math that we do on this channel. And yeah, all right, keep watching. Take care.